And we are recording this lecture, just so everyone knows.
Wow.
Hi, Feppa.
Feppa's here. Uh-oh. I watch myself.
A lot of familiar names.
Great. Feppa will keep us in line. Yeah. Well, that's the key. Feppa, that's supposed to be my job. You do it better than I do.
Does everybody hear us all well?
Yeah. Oh,
sounds great.
Good. Well, I think Julie asked the question, can you hear the participants?
No, participants don't have audio. It'd be a loud room.
Right.
Yeah.
We let you chat. We in our classrooms, you have audio and visual. We can see you and we can hear you. You speak at real time.
Yeah. Hey, John, maybe go ahead and take the reins. I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Visual Arts Passage. Today, we are going to talk about developing style. I like to refer to it as voice, personal point of view. We'll talk about that in a little bit further. Before I get started, I want to everyone say hi to Edward Kinsella. He's going to be our guest today, and he's going to be driving a big chunk of this. So say hi, Edward.
Hi, everybody.
And then everyone say hi to Timmy Trebon. Timmy's
Hello, Timmy.
Timmy's my business partner in all of our educational products, and he's the one who really keeps everybody in line. So he's herding cats or artists. It's about the same thing. So Timmy, why don't you ask your famous questions of, kind of walk people around the room just briefly, tell them what differences are.
Yeah. So I can see a lot of you have found the chat. If you haven't yet, you'll see there's a menu at the bottom of the screen. Be sure to select the chat. And then when you're typing in the box, make sure that you're typing to all panelists and attendees. Unless you have a question that you only want to send to the panelists, just make sure you send it to everybody, because this is a big part of the community. We like everybody to be able to share their thoughts. So just to test that out, why doesn't everybody share what city they're joining us from?
And while everyone's doing that, I'm going to address Linda May's question.
Yeah, I thought I said that too.
They're just referring to when we have an actual class, but you'll get visuals in a minute for the presentation. It's just, you should be seeing just Visual Arts Passage on your screen.
Wow. Delhi, Rome, San Juan.
Wow.
Kansas City.
Yeah, Linda, this is a webinar room. It's slightly different with our classroom. Our classrooms, we have, 8 or 10 people in the room. Everybody has microphone privileges and video privileges. So
it's very much like a traditional classroom. As we say, everybody has a front row seat in our classrooms. And then I have one last thing I'm going to share with everybody. If you have questions about the lecture that you might want Ted to answer or John to answer, please do not type them in the chat, because they'll get buried and it's hard for us to find them. Go down to your menu and you'll see a Q&A button, and select that, and please enter your questions there. That way John and I can moderate the questions for Ted as the lecture goes on. So that's all I have. John, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. I'm going to start with today's topic is how to find your style. And before we really get into the meat of it, I always try to talk about the passage visually, the Visual Arts Passage, just a little bit up front, what our classes are like, what they're about. If you want to find out more about us and how it all works, go to visualartspassage.com and go to the About page. Basically, we're a live online delivery. It's delivered from some of the best working practitioners in the industry. This fall, we'll have Mike Barrick heading up our entertainment and game arts skills and process class, the first of the upper level classes. I'll be teaching the 5-week foundations class, and then Edward Kinsella and John Foster will be our other instructors in the upper level classes. So each of the classes are live online for 3 hours on Saturday afternoons. Each installment runs 11 weeks long. During the week, we use Slack, which is a great communication tool to stay in touch with our students, that we can check in on them or they can check in on us. Either way, they can communicate with each other. They can post their work. We make comments. We check in. So nobody's waiting for the Saturday class. It just makes the class so much more robust. And then all of the classes start September 29th. So if you want to know more, go to the About page, and we can actually you can ask us questions at the end of this discussion today about the classes. So this is a huge part of my life. Developing the Illustration Academy, Visual Arts Passage. The whole idea was surrounding myself and surrounding the other artists, creating a place of excellence. And I think part of my talk today, a big part of the talk today, is going to be around those people. One of the criteria about the instructors that teach with us is they've kind of created their own personal voice. They have they've linked their work together with something personally, like whatever you want to call it, personal voice, their style. And I don't really like to use style as much, because I think most people confuse style with technique. And this isn't about materials. It's about it's about how somebody sees the world, how somebody identifies problems and solves problem in their own unique way. A lot of it has to do with how they compose. It has to do with what they've read, what they've looked at, what they've absorbed in their life. So you'll see that in the imagery that I've chosen. I'm going to start with the person who's had the most influence on me, as probably as a person and as an artist, and he's had a huge amount of influence on, and I'll even say Edward, who's joining us, and many of our students, many of the people that have gone through our programs and have focused on developing themselves, a style for themselves. So it's kind of interesting. Edward and I were talking right before class, in choosing work from Mark. He's gone so many different directions, and it's kind of amazing that one artist has developed so many different visual looks, but they all kind of link together. There's something that holds it together with his design sense. As you know, a very representational painter. Some of his illustration work, to working in flat shape and collage, and things he's doing now. And it's really interesting to me, this, the beautiful paintings that he does now, it's like they all seem like they come from the same place. They all seem like they come from the same person. And
it's like a mix of everything.
Yeah. And, I showed this piece in my foundations class the other day, and the sophistication that's in that piece, the mark making, the color sense, the simple design and really complex use of materials and diversity of materials. I mean, it's a very simple picture, but it has a very complex finish to it. And he was doing that in things like this, very simple design. And he focused on real variety in his mark making, the flat versus the very finished and rendered. it still links together. And it's him. Another great influence on my life, and artistically and as a person, is Gary Kelly, and somebody that is, a personal voice is just astounding, and the influence he's had on so many other illustrators. His influences, listen to him openly talk about his influences of looking at, post-impressionist. He was a big fan of Bonnard and Vuillard, and he looked at, German expressionists, poster expressionists, Max Beckmann, Picasso, contemporary, always looking at fine artists as painters for influence. And he developed something that was, really uniquely his. And again, I don't know if it's his design sense, his ability to explore and use it, that, absorb somebody else's, knowledge, and being able to be able to express it through his own work and interpret it a different way. It was so funny when I'm going through and I'm choosing these images to put up here, and I have to contain myself because I get so excited about it. I have to keep pulling pieces out because it's like the guy's done so much and so much beautiful work. Now this is monotypes that he does. They're held together by the design sense that he has. Completely different materials. I've always said that, I've tried to explain to students that it's not the materials. Materials can be very helpful. They can push you in different directions, but it's not the materials that make the point of view. I always said that if I could take, this last year we had 15 instructors at the Illustration Academy, and if I could put them all in a circle and put them, everybody does demonstration when they're there, have them put, sit in a circle and have them put all their materials down on the ground, and then stand up and move 3 chairs to the left, and then use the other person's materials. You would not see a difference. You would be able to identify everybody's work. The materials would not change. The point of view, the design sense, how they say things, how they solve things, that goes way beyond materials. So I'm pretty unbiased to materials, what people use. In classroom, I'm always that way. This is a guy that, just is all about personal voice. Brad Holland, and taught with us for the first time. Somebody I have admired since I was in art school, and just, was probably the most, after it kind of went my father, then Gary Kelly, and then Brad Holland, and Gary kind of back and forth as being the most dominant people in the industry. I always looked at it, and maybe it's because they were my favorites, but they also won more medals than anybody. They were the stars. Personal voice. This is one of my favorite pieces. I love this. I will linger. You don't have to read through the whole thing. It's all, the text is all about how everybody today is an artist. And at the end, it says it left these days who are not artists are illustrators. So the only people that are left that aren't artists are illustrators. I thought that was a great, very funny quote. Chris Payne. Chris, he said he's a morph between Mort Drucker and Rembrandt. And, his influences are obvious. He's obviously been influenced by the comic world. He's been influenced by Mad Magazine. He's been influenced by traditional painting. Very, very influenced by Norman Rockwell. But he's made it his own. It's this, it's interesting when you see all Chris's work and then you meet him personally. I think people really kind of sigh, and it's like, he's a wonderful guy. They just kind of like go, oh, I get it now. I get where all those crazy pictures come from. I love showing this piece. It's like, what an honor. The Wyeth family commissioned him to do this piece for Andrew's birthday. And can you imagine the pressure doing that? There's Howard Pyle, but Chris has got a massive point of view, and it comes from everything he's looked at, everything he's read. Here's John Foster. John actually is teaching our process and skills and craft for illustration starting in September. Phenomenal artist, can do so many things. He knows has a tremendous amount of technical understanding, both traditionally and digitally, and he's managed to put it together in a voice that when you see a John Foster piece, you know it's John Foster. And as I always say, you can't get enough John Foster. Guy's amazing. George Pratt, comic artist, graphic novelist, great painter, great drawer, almost impossible to identify, to pigeonhole him as anything, because he does so many things well. And I always forget when I'm looking at, I have to remind people when you're looking at George's work, he's, those graphic novels, he wrote those. It's not just the visuals. Brilliant guy. George's, his influences, his artistic influence, he's like a walking encyclopedia on the history of art, of traditional painting, comics, illustration, and he is probably the most well-read individual I know. Just absorbs everything around him, and it all comes out. It happens on the, whatever substrate he's working on. It kind of explodes onto the canvas. Bill Sienkiewicz. Great comic artist. He's been teaching with us for about 3 or 4 years. Has identified himself. Sienkiewicz. Natalie Hall. Natalie was the artist that her work was featured in The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's Shape of Water. She's a tattoo artist, somebody that is, really unique, and definitely has developed her own voice. She taught with us for the first time this year. She was a student at George Pratt's. She wasn't a student at the Academy. I wish she was. I wish I could claim I had anything to do with this, but this is just a phenomenal talent. One of very personal drawer. Absolutely stellar. Sterling Hunley. This next group of artists are all people that I think were heavily influenced by the first 3 artists I showed you, or maybe the first 4. I'll include Brad in there, but they were all students at the Illustration Academy. They were heavily influenced by George Pratt, my father, John Foster, Gary Kelly, Chris Payne. And it's interesting, and I think Edward's going to talk about it a lot from his perspective, but I watch these people actively pursue point of view, actively pursue uniqueness, something that spoke from them. And they pushed it. It wasn't something, I know that it can, you know, it happens for people at different times in their career that they kind of find something that's uniquely them. Sometimes it happens very late in somebody's career. But I think that, you know, if you can force it, you can search for it. And identity in the industry is extremely important. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that our instructors have that. They have a uniqueness about what they do. And I think that because of that, it's easier for them to talk about, you know, the process. And you're going to see Edward, you know, listen to Edward talk about how he's developed. And everybody might have a kind of a different way that they've done it. You know, everybody's has their own story. But Sterling is just, you know, Sterling's brilliant, and just I love the work that he produces, his illustration work and what he does for himself. It's always been unique. It's always been about what he has to say. He pushes it as much as anybody I've ever seen. Jeffrey Allen Love, very influenced by Sterling. Probably more in mindset. I know Jeffrey interned for Sterling for a while, and I know that there was lots of conversation back and forth about voice and in developing oneself. And Jeffrey certainly has. I love the fact that he's kind of taken on a genre that had a very different look to it before he was there. I mean, the whole fantasy cover, fantasy painting, you know, most of what was there was really high polish, high finish. Not everything, but he approached it completely different with the art that he wanted to make. Same stories, same subject, same genre, but with a really unique way of addressing the subject matter. And I think he's become a superstar because of it. Because he's, you know, look at, you know, what does that look like on a kiosk, a book kiosk? I mean, that thing it's a poster. It stands out. Very, very powerful. And don't think that, I mean, because it's so graphic, he's a really good drawer too. I mean, he has technical skills. This is his expression. This is what he wants to do. This is what the artwork he wants to make. Vanessa Del Rey, comic artist, that attended the Academy 9 years ago. And, you know, she's listed as one of the top 30 most important comic artists working, and just spectacular. I love watching her. I love watching her draw. I love the way she draws. But it's very, very personal. Francis Vallejo. Francis has done a number of as guest speaker in the program and lectures with us. Has taught with us at the Academy last year, and started out as a comic artist, and now doing a lot of book. Kind of changed his direction, is working in the publishing industry, and extremely expressive with his work. Always has been. Has immense skill. And I love the fact that, you know, he created all this skill. He's just a phenomenal drawer, and he's aimed it. He's focused it in other directions. You know, his picture making is how he wants to say something. And then the last guy that I wanted to show is Edward Kinsella, and I'm only going to show one piece of his. And Edward's completely unique, as much as you can be. I don't think anybody can be completely unique. Everybody is influenced by everything they see. They're influenced by other artists. I love the fact that, like when Gary's teaching, he's more than willing to talk about his influences, the artists that he's looked at, and you can see things where, oh, wow, I can tell that came from there. But then he's wrapped it into Gary Kelly. I mean, he's taken it and twisted it and made it his own. And you can see that with any artist. I mean, nobody's an island. Nobody's completely unique. But I think Edward has done it, has established himself a voice that is very much his own. And he is going to be an excellent individual to explain his journey and how he's done it. So Edward, you only said about 2 words so far. So it's, and I hope you enjoy looking at these images as much as I do. I really do struggle if trying to, and it's like, how do you, I kept saying, okay, I'm going to put 5 images from each artist on here. And how do you put 5 Gary Kelly images up there and to represent him? I mean, he's just done too much. He's too much of a force. I want to put 50. But anyway, Edward, take the floor. I'm going to stop sharing and let you go forward here.
Thank you, John. All right, let me just share my screen here. Okay, so the first part of my presentation is going to be a little boring, but hopefully inspiring. I'm going to read through a document that I made for Visual Arts Passage. I made it for my installment 1 students, which is the sort of the foundations, not the foundations, but sort of the building blocks of picture making portion of the program. And then I ended up going into the next portion of the program, which is concept development and ideation. And that's where I started delivering it. And now I sort of use it for that one, and also the 3rd installment that we have, which is portfolio and career development. But it's good to deliver this information early on, but it almost makes more sense to deliver it later, because until you learn to draw, until you learn to see as an artist and experience techniques in media and life and all the things that sort of go into art, it seems rather silly and pointless to talk about style at that point. But I wanted to deliver this for you guys in a live free lecture, because I felt that this information is often, the information about developing a style, personal viewpoint, it's often not talked about, and it's often not really explained well. And my aim with creating this presentation is to help explain it a bit better. There's certain artists out there who have put posts on social media about this type of thing and did it so well. And when I read those posts, I thought, that's so great, because somebody else agrees with me. So I'm not a complete crazy person. But to me, style, talk about it like that, it seems very shallow. It seems like you're just talking about what Sterling would call surface treatment. So it's just how the image itself looks. That's how a lot of people think of style. And to me, that's very shallow. If you go after style and are in a pursuit of style in that way, you're going to end up unhappy, because you're just going to be picking and choosing things to make something that quote unquote looks cool, but doesn't actually have any substance or soul to it. So anyways, I set about writing this out to try to...
Hey, Edward, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second.
Sure.
Because something that totally, I've thought about that so much and how to articulate it. And that's a really great way to articulate it. It's not surface. And when you go to, like, you look at the way somebody draws, and I always like to think about being in life drawing class with Chris, or especially with Gary. And Gary, like when he's drawing the figure, he can't help but design a Gary Kelly image. I mean, it's like, it oozes from him. And
Right.
And it's so, you can see it so readily just in his drawing expression.
I totally agree. Yeah. It's funny because when I do figure drawing, I try to throw it all out the window and do something different. But oftentimes there are these natural tendencies that just sort of happen. Okay, so I'm going to read through this really quickly, and then I have an image presentation that goes along with it. So just bear with me. Okay, so these are all the main points about developing a personal viewpoint, personal style, in my opinion. So first things first, it's personal. Every artist is different. You are your own person with your own ideas. This is about you and no one else. Stop comparing yourself to others and focus on you. Who are you and what do you want? This is really important because I think so many of us, we're looking to the right, we're looking to the left when we're in school, we're seeing other artists work certain ways, certain things are working well for them and not working well for us. Why is it not working for me? We start freaking out and worrying that we have a deficiency. We worry that we're not good enough. What often happens, and I think it has a lot to do with sort of the way your brain is wired, but certain things are going to work well for you and certain things are not. And I would encourage you to find the things that work well for you and go after those. So how do you figure out a style? Well, I'd start with a journal. Dig deep to find out who you truly are as an artist. Write about everything. What you figured out with your work that day, your struggles, your hopes and dreams, future plans, etc. Early in my development, I would often write a journal entry after completing each new piece of art. I would list the things that I felt needed improvement and also things that worked really well. I would write at length about what I desired most in my imagery and the difficulty in getting there. There's something about, so this is sort of why I journaled. There's something about physically writing down your thoughts on development that solidifies them both in memory and practice. Before I started journaling, I would often make the same mistakes piece after piece. And I know for those of you who've gotten to a place where you're making work, whether it's for jobs or whether it's for yourself trying to build your portfolio, you will often make a mistake in a piece, in an illustration, and you'll say, oh, why did I do that? And then 2 pieces later, you'll do the exact same thing. So to me, I wanted to stop that from happening. The next point, play. Play with all different types of materials, especially those that you don't have much control over. Ask yourself, how can I make this more fun? Don't forget down the road how much you love to draw and create art. If you aren't enjoying the process, you're doing it wrong. Try collage, spray paint, splattering paint, drawing on the floor, etc. Look at your work and art making from a different perspective if you feel down about it. The fun in creation doesn't go away. Sometimes you're just blinded by practicality or stuck in the way I do it. Watch out for that because it happens time and time again. You'll get locked into a certain way of working and you think, this is the only way I can make something. It isn't true. But sometimes to break that cycle, you have to really let yourself go. And like I said, trying something you don't have control over, the idea behind that came from working under John English and being his student and him saying, you know, use a paintbrush that's kind of crazy and, you know, you use it a lot and it's hard to control and you don't know what's going to happen. Use that, you know, use a squeegee, use something you're not used to and see what happens. And the idea behind that is that we often, as human beings, hesitate when we're afraid of the next decision. When you're working on a painting, especially something, you know, that's not digital and you can't press Apple Z, you often hesitate out of fear. And you'll start over controlling every single action that you are doing. So all that's going to do is make you create work that looks stiff and boring, or you're just going to not enjoy the experience. So if you pick up a tool every once in a while that you kind of can't control, you're sort of going to get out of your own way and not overthink it. And something will happen that you didn't expect. And it will be one of those happy accidents or exciting surprises that sort of fills you up again with excitement and makes you want to keep going. So I'd encourage all of you to do that. So here's a little side note to that. Try something new, something difficult to control, or something not intended for what you're doing. A stick, tar, power tools, household items, etc. Maybe it's a huge brush, a squeegee, or a sea sponge. A tool that you don't have complete control over will surprise and delight you. It may drive you a bit crazy, but letting go is a big part of having fun in image making. All right, so let's move on from there. Media, that's a big part of it. and this is what I did. And by the way, all of this stuff, it came from a lot of different sources, from my teachers at the Illustration Academy and other programs that I've been in. A lot of it's my own experiences that I had in college. But it's everything that I think is important that goes into it. And when I do my image presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these points in depth relating to certain pieces in my own artistic journey, and it'll make more sense. So media, and this is a really simple exercise. Once you get to a certain point where well, I guess this isn't the right one because I mean something else by media, but once you get to a certain point in your development where you tried a lot of things, start writing down the things that you liked using the most. And I'm realizing that I wrote media, something else, and materials is what I'm talking about. But anyways, so media, make a list of all the media that you like: movies, music, TV, books, etc. Why do you gravitate towards certain songs, images, genres, etc.? And what types of imagery do they conjure up? This stuff is super important. You know, you might not think that this goes into your quote unquote style or what you gravitate towards with art, but it really does. You know, are you a Game of Thrones person? Do you like reading science fiction, fantasy? You know, all those things go into your work. Environment, where you grew up, the surroundings, the places you explored as a child, what filled you with a sense of wonder and excitement. Your experience as a child can directly relate to what types of things you like to draw and paint. And for me, it'll make sense pretty soon when I do my image presentation. It's trees, it's the woods. Travel. Nothing opens up your mind for exploration and self-reflection like travel does. Get out there, go see the art, architecture, etc. that you've longed to see your whole life. This was something that I'll also touch on in my presentation. John English encouraged me to go see the paintings that I've been looking at in books for my entire life. Go see them in person. It will change everything, and it did. Sketchbook. Work from life in your sketchbook all the time. Sometimes it's those quick decisions and simple materials that are the most you and the most enjoyable. This is a really, really, really big deal. For anyone who's having trouble drawing, figuring out a style, figuring out what they want to draw, the simple answer is draw in a sketchbook all the time. Draw everything. Draw your house, draw your room, draw a table scene, draw the park, you know, draw trees, draw whatever it is. One of the things I love doing is going to the art museum or going to a history museum and finding the section on indigenous masks, just drawing masks. I love that. It's just, there's something to it. And also, you know, here's the idea too with the sketchbook. Don't draw something that you don't want to draw. If it's boring, you're not going to be excited about it. So go find things that you like and draw them. So here's the materials part that I want to talk about. Materials, what feels right to you? Sometimes you work with a material or tool that feels natural the first time you use it, while others are clumsy and difficult to master. Find what feels the most you, whether it's the final look of the piece or the physical act of making it. Try everything and write about what you like and don't like about each material. Your techniques and materials should be a collection of things you enjoy using. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but in my search, basically what I did was at a certain point, I think it was around maybe 8 years ago, I decided to make this long list of everything that I liked using, whether it was ink, colored pencil, whatever. I wrote down what I liked about it, what I didn't, and then I selected the things that I liked the most and decided those were the materials I was going to use because they made me happy. Art. What art do you gravitate towards the most? Who are your favorite artists? Not just the instant gratification, sugary, sweet ones, but the real stuff, the art that touches your soul, the art that has a soul. Look at that work. Surround yourself with that work. The art and artists who really speak to you. This type of work goes beyond the surface. It's there that you'll find your true self as an artist, below the tricks and gimmicks, beyond the quote-unquote style. So here's the big question at the end of this. Why? Well, most likely you're going down this path because art making makes you happy. And it gives you fulfillment or sense of purpose. So you're choosing this profession to be happy. So finding your voice and the materials you like is important. Best case scenario is that you'll be doing this every day for the rest of your life. So you might as well be you and enjoy the process. Okay, so that's that part. Now here's a presentation.
That's fabulous, Edward.
Thank you, John.
That is really great. When you were finishing that, all I could think about was I was relating it to people I know, to artists that I'm around.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I mean, that's one of the things that I think we've done with community really well, is that we all know each other pretty well. We've gotten to know each other.
Yeah.
And I think that I think to like the people that are most mature, Gary and my father, and I've gotten to know Brad a little bit better in the last year or so. But my father's 85, going to have his 85th birthday next month.
Wow.
And he goes to the studio, he goes into his studio every day and he works. And he doesn't have to, but that's all he wants to do. And I'm just thinking that's like, and I've watched it snowball over the last 15 or 20 years. It's like, it was almost like he felt like he was running out of time.
Yeah.
And so he started taking better care of himself. He started doing, everything was aimed at what can he do individually. And it was kind of a chase he's been on, but I realized if he's like if he's had a physical problem, he's been sick and he gets depressed, most of his depression is not about his depression, is the fact that he's not in the studio.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't work.
Yeah, that point I made about the best case scenarios that you're gonna do this for the rest of your life, it's true. I mean, I don't have a retirement plan because I'm not retiring. I'm not gonna stop. There's no way. I'm too excited.
Yeah, it's the best, and the people that are the best at it, that's their point. That it's a lifestyle, and I guess I explain it any other way. It's the thing that makes them happy, and if that's what you want to do with your life, it's got a wonderful payback. Almost all of my dad's friends are gone. They're not. My dad is Mark English. Most of his all of his contemporaries, when he was working as considered one of the Westport, Connecticut artists, the artists of the 60s and 70s, all those people are gone. But he looks to people like Edward. He looks to people like George Pratt and John Foster, Gary Kelly, Chris Payne. He looks to people that are younger that have that same point of view, and age really has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm friends with guys that are 75, 85, and I'm friends with, some of our instructors this summer were, basically they're 30, and I've become really good friends with those people, because we have the same point of view, the same interests in life. And
it's so true. I think there's something that does happen where there's this barrier that is gone. Once you get to a certain point, a barrier drops away, and it doesn't matter what age you are.
It's interest.
Your friends. Yeah.
Interest. Sorry, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. Keep going.
You're fine. It's good points.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is basically, and I'm going to run through this quickly. There's 115 slides here, but it all relates. And some of these I showed in our last webinar, so it'll be a bit of a repeat, but I'm going to be talking about it in a different way. So anyways, this is sort of the beginning of my development as a quote unquote illustrator. This was my junior year in college. I was just starting to find something, trying to figure out my voice, my style. This is all acrylic on illustration board. That's all it is, basically, just layered acrylic with medium, and yeah. Anyways, but I liked this. It worked. I just didn't know. It didn't feel right, if that makes sense. So I went to the Illustration Academy for 2 years, and let's see if I can. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can move this bar. Is that possible? Maybe there. That's better, I guess. So I went to the Illustration Academy for a couple years, and the first thing that I did when I got out of the academy was I redid some of my pieces that I had done as a student there that I felt were failures. So this is one of the first ones that I redid. It was a portrait of Adrian Brody. And I did some things I'd never done before. It's mixed media. It's acrylic on illustration board with oil washes on top. So it's oil paint mixed with Gamsol. Of course, all these things that I learned are all from the teachers of the Academy, Mark English, and everybody else talking about layering mixed media and what you can do with mixed media. If any of you ever get the chance to watch Mark English paint, or talk to him, or see his studio, the amount of materials that he puts into one piece of artwork is insane. And for his illustrations, it was everything. And seeing artists work like that, where it isn't just a 100% oil painting, it's not 100%, acrylic or colored pencil or ink or whatever. It's everything under the sun, based upon what those materials' strengths and weaknesses are. And the idea of using materials like that excited me so much. I was so excited, for lack of a better word. So that's what I was trying to do with this, layer materials. There's also some ink in here, some FW ink. But again, didn't feel like me. Starting my career, it had to feel like me, by the way, because I had graduated from college and it was time to start my career as an illustrator. So I started promoting that work and I got jobs right away. These were both done for Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. This was the first month of the first year that I started working, the first couple jobs I got. Same process, by the way, acrylic, oil wash. Basically, like, just to explain a little bit, in the background of the image on the right, that is all acrylic built up, and then the shadow on there is a thin down oil wash, and that's all it is. Same thing on the couch, it's all oil wash. Same process for this one. This is the second illustration assignment I ever got. It was for Rolling Stone magazine, and used the same process. Still didn't feel like me. Why didn't it feel like me? I guess it was a process that came pretty easily to me, but I didn't enjoy doing a drawing that I felt was working. And I know that a lot of you probably had this experience making pieces of art. You do a drawing that you like, that you feel like is working pretty well. And then if you're working in acrylic, then you start covering it up with layers of plastic paint. And the frustration of losing parts of your drawing, and then having to repaint areas or cover everything up with opaque paint, it's super annoying. And I felt like, why would I do all the work of the drawing and then cover it all up? And that's what didn't feel like me. I wanted the drawing to be the most important part. Still going with that style, same process. I actually used chalk on the chalkboard in the background to get the right look. So it's a lot of materials in there: ink, acrylic, oil, chalk. I used craft paint for this, mixed with acrylic. Had kind of a chalky look to it. Again, oil wash in a lot of areas, like the shadow cast from his chin. This was a job for Philadelphia Weekly. And this is all about 2007, 2008. Two more for Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, same process. Using a lot more ink in these. Two more. Still didn't feel like me. It's a really bad scan of a piece I did for Rolling Stone. This is Jack White and the Raconteurs. Okay, so that was like the first year and a half of my career. And here I was with a portfolio full of work that I didn't really want to do again. And that's sort of the idea behind having a portfolio. You present a portfolio online to art directors, you're saying, this is work that I'd be willing to do again. And for me, it wasn't. I didn't want to work like this anymore. So I went to Paris to find myself. And I filled a 50-page sketchbook. I decided when I went to Paris, and I'll talk more about sketchbooks in a minute, but decided when I went to Paris that I was going to fill a sketchbook and draw from life. I hadn't drawn from life in a long time. I guess I had done a figure drawing class when I moved back to my hometown after college, but I felt that in my sketchbook, I was just drawing the same stuff over and over again. I was regurgitating the same material. And basically it was faces, drawing faces all the time, sort of monsters and things like that. And what I realized pretty quickly was the well was very shallow. I did not have enough stored memory to draw anything out of my head, and at least anything new or interesting to me. So I decided to stop doing that and to draw from life. I went to Paris for a month to do that. This is a gouache painting in that sketchbook. Another gouache painting. This is all pencil and gouache. This is FW ink and a brush pen. I had a lot of materials with me, and I was just playing around. This was absinthe, drinking absinthe in my hotel room. This was outside of Versailles, actually. Another one from Paris. Another one. Okay, so basically what happened is I got back from Paris and I floundered. I went there, saw all the art that I had seen in books my entire life, things that excited me more than anything: Impressionism, Toulouse-Lautrec, posters of the turn of the century, soaking in all this information, drawing and painting for myself, feeling like more like an artist than I had ever felt. And it seems very cliche and silly and kind of ridiculous, but the magic of that time in Paris was so real and felt so pure. I realized I had never felt anything like that in my studio. I'd never felt anything like that during an illustration job. I realized how unhappy I really was as an illustrator. So I tried something new. This is the first piece I did when I got back in town. This is for Rolling Stone of Metallica. I do not like this piece, nor do I like the ones that I'm going to show you a few after this. But I was trying something new. I'd seen a lot of posters, like I said, things that excited me for a long time. And I was trying to go after that a little bit. This is, by the way, that last one, this one, it's ink wash and acrylic on illustration board. Keira Knightley. This is a job I did for the New Yorker that I absolutely hate. It's pretty bad, but this was the journey, you know, trying to figure myself out. Can I leave all the pencil work and just do a little bit of rendering? Can I get away with that? Is that what I want to do? And layer some acrylic on top of it? I don't know. I have no idea how to do this. Just trying to figure it out. Another one from that same time period. This is about 2008, 2009, or 2009, I guess. Trying to figure myself out. And I just couldn't get there. Okay, so this is, and the unfortunate part was that a lot of that work, I knew how bad it was. And I knew that it was a step backwards from what I was doing earlier in my career. But it was a fight that I was willing to fight, I guess. It was a battle I was willing to fight because I knew that something better was on the horizon. I knew that I was going to get there. I just had to keep pushing and keep working to find my true voice. So this is where I ended up going to Richmond and working with Sterling Hunley. And I started to think about, with his urging, well, what do I really want? And what makes me the artist that I am? So this might be, the next couple slides might be a little bit of a repeat of that document that I wrote over, but what makes you, you? It's not just about surface treatment. It's your past, your childhood memories, the things you naturally gravitate towards, not just because they're cool, the music you listen to, the books you like, the movies you like, the art you like, especially the art that stirs your soul. It's something in nature, furniture design, graphic design, interior design, etc. It's everything that pleases you and makes up the part of your identity that includes your interests. So to me, at this point, I decided I'm going to remove the visual clutter from my life both physically and also just what I was looking at in books and imagery online. I was going to sort of reframe the way that the information that I was taking in and get rid of all the stuff that I didn't like anymore. So I decided to make a list. What makes me me? And that's where I started. This was all in my journal. So what makes me me? What do I like? Old photographs, classical music, electronic music, drone music, masks, especially Inuit masks, anything turn of the century, antique furniture and lighting, objects from history with patina, texture, dirt, and grime, nature, the woods, trees, the paranormal, ghosts, cryptozoology, aliens, vampires, monsters, etc., mummies, skeletons, graveyards, creepy stuff, the mysterious, the unknown, a sense of wonder about the world, still using my imagination, not cynical. Eastern philosophy, French turn of the century art, especially posters, graphic solutions to represent realistic things. And that's like the main point that I realized. The thing that excites me the most in art are posters. But why? Why do I like posters so much? And what I realized is you're taking something realistic and you're making decisions on how to turn it into a graphic shape and still read. Things that, those are things that were taught to me in the Illustration Academy, how to do that properly. And I decided that's the thing that excites me the most. The solutions and the decisions that you make as an artist to simplify those objects and make them graphic, that excites me. And printmaking, it's a great place for that. Old buildings, architecture, winter, and how hushed and quiet it makes the world. This is silly, but everything that I really like, I wanted to write down. The sound of church bells in the distance on a cold, snowy day. Manual labor, yard work, gardening, getting my hands dirty, solving complex problems with simple solutions. Okay, so that's my list. So if you're trying to find your style, make a list. Okay. So then, and these things on the top of this, the top 4 points I've already said, so I'm not going to repeat them, except for maybe the last one. What art do I like the most and what materials could emulate that? So the bottom of this one, I made some choices 3 to 4 years into my career. And this is the time that I'm at right now chronologically in this presentation. I made some choices to stop looking at contemporary illustration altogether, to start working on toned paper instead of illustration board, to use gouache instead of acrylic, to plan everything on tracing paper first, to let the paper color show through, to be more simplified and clean, to spend more time on my work at the early stages, to get better at thumbnail sketches, to surround myself with art and things that inspire me, and to purge all the visual clutter from my life, to celebrate limitations and imperfection, to try to make art that satisfies my soul, not just what the client needs, to believe in my ideas and choices, to trust my instincts, to stop listening to others, to stop comparing myself to others, stop listening to that little voice that says, this is what an illustration is supposed to look like, to become the artist I've always wanted to be. And then I got there. And it took me, let's see, this is 2010 now. So 2007 is when I started my career. This is 2010. I was in Richmond, was doing a mentorship with Sterling Hundley. And by the way, for all of you who are considering Visual Arts Passage classes, the third class that we have, it's portfolio development and career development. And that class is based on what I went through in Sterling's mentorship because it went so well. And I based our third installment on that, and with the hope that it would go as well for those students. And every single student far exceeded my expectations, and I'm sure their expectations as well. I'm so excited about the work that we've had in that class. And when I'm done here, I want to show a few of those pieces. Okay, so I started doing work based on what I wanted to do. And actually, let me exit out of here really quick because I want to show you guys what I started looking at. I'm going to cycle through this really quickly.
Hey, Edward, can we pause for just a second here?
Sure.
Tim, we always take a poll in the middle of the class. Can we do that right now while you're setting up?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I just launched a poll. This is just really helpful for us to get a little bit of feedback on the lecture, everyone. One reminder I'll say is this recording will be available after the broadcast. It's available to anybody who applies to Visual Arts Passage for completely free. That does not mean you have to attend Visual Arts Passage. You don't have to pay to apply. You don't have to make any commitment. All you have to do is apply. So it's a pretty simple opportunity. I'll give it back to you, John.
Well, I'm just going to hand it back to Edward. Sorry to interrupt, but thank you, Edward. Keep going.
No, you're fine. Okay, so I know we're trying to keep this till 1:30, so I'm just trying to zoom through it. So during that time in Richmond, I decided, like I said, to rid my life of the visual clutter and to start looking at the things that really inspired me the most. And that would be the art that I look at. I stopped looking at, all the artists that I liked on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. I know Instagram wasn't around, by the way, when I was doing this, but you know what I mean. I felt that it was clouding my judgment. It was making me, I was getting excited about the work that I was seeing, and I was using that excitement and my interest in that work to influence my work that very day. And I felt like it was influencing me too much. So I decided to go backwards in time and find the things that I really loved the most. So this is Edward Tooney, Gary Kelly. Toulouse-Lautrec is like, figure out who your number one artist is. I feel like that's a big deal. Lautrec is my number one. Mary Cassatt. I saw her prints for the first time in Paris, and they blew me away. I still think it's some of my favorite work I've ever seen. Mark English. This is Adolf Munzer. Albert Weisgerber. Another Munzer. Hans Christensen. These are from Jugend magazine, which is a German Art Nouveau magazine, turn of the century. William Nicholson. I don't know who did this one, but another cover for Jugend magazine. So this is the work I started. This is Reinhold Eichler. This is the work I started looking at. This is the work that I love the most. Graphic solutions to represent realistic things. What do you do? And back then, it's printing capabilities and what they could do and how to, basically a colorized drawing. And that was exciting me. All the textures and the way they were doing things. It was everything I loved about poster art and graphic art in general. Andrew Zorn, etching. Hohenstein. John, I think your mic's on still, by the way. Another Adolf Munzer. Toulouse-Lautrec. Sterling, Hunley. This piece still kills me. Dave McKeon. George Mean. Edward Penfield. Pierre Bernard, that's the background of my computer. A desktop. Another Pierre Bernard. I'm going to butcher this name, but Gustave Caillebotte, French impressionist painter. He's considered impressionist. This is Karl Otto Tschechner. I know I'm butchering every single name, but this is Edmund Dulac, Sterling. This is Jules Alexander Grun. Klimt. Another Klimt. Phil Hale. Okay, so you get the idea, all right? I'm looking at the things that I like the most. But what I was doing at the time is I was taking out people like Phil Hale, Sterling, and Mark. I wasn't looking at that stuff so much because that stuff was too new. It was too current. And I felt like I didn't want to be influenced by that stuff. I wanted to be influenced by something else, something that excited me, the things that excited me as a child, When I was a kid, the things I naturally gravitated towards were posters and things of that nature. So that's what I went after. I love these Albert Weisgerbers. Just really simple solutions and really fun solutions. Okay, so let me get back to my presentation here. All right, so this is where I'm at in Richmond. And here's basically what happened. I'm trying to keep this quick, but I started that process that I talked about in the beginning of journaling and trying to decide what makes me me as an artist. What are all the elements that go into that? Materials, things I like, art that I like, things I naturally gravitate towards. And I started making some serious decisions like, you know what? I don't want to use acrylic anymore. I hate it. I've always hated acrylic. It's plastic paint. I want to use something real. Started using gouache and watercolor, ink wash over graphite. And it took a little while, and you saw those early experiments with the acrylic and ink wash. It didn't work. So now here's where it started working. These were pieces I did for a thesis under the direction of Sterling. And the idea was that I was exploring themes and ideas that were my own for the first time as a professional, or let's just say even when I was a student, a wannabe professional, a wannabe illustrator. For the first time since that journey started, I was believing in my own ideas and deciding that the things that I actually wanted to draw and paint were worthy of being drawn and painted. As silly as they might have been, I was going to finally take the plunge and believe in myself. And that's why I did these pieces. They were all the things that I liked visually put into one image. At the time, I was doing a lot of experiments. Sterling told me to try doing daily exercises, which if you're in my installment 3 class, we do that as well. This was a job that I got around that time. Again, trusting my instincts for the first time, believing in myself, thinking that the way that I want to do it would be okay. So then I decided to do an image that threw everything out, everything that I didn't want to draw and paint, and only left the things that I felt would be interesting and fun. And that's when I did this image. I called it Winter 1. It's very Klimt-like, but I decided that I wasn't going to hide from my influences. I wasn't going to shy away from going after the things that I liked because I felt that someone might go, "Oh, that looks like Klimt." Like, I decided I don't care. I'm going to just do it. I want to do what I want to do. This was a job I did around that time. It was Beck for Wired Magazine. And you can see the stuff that I just showed you. If you've been here since the beginning of this presentation, you saw my early work. It looked nothing like this. If you saw the stuff that I just showed you, the influences, there's a lot of that in here. And that was the idea, that if I love this art so much, why didn't I try some of that stuff? And I was never directly looking at it and trying to copy anything that I saw. But I let the influence soak in, and then I squeezed out the sponge when I went to work. Another piece from that time. So here's where following your own voice and believing in your own ideas pays off. I decided to, all that personal work that I just showed you, stuff I did for Sterling, I decided I'm going to take everything out of my portfolio for the most part online, and I'm going to put in all these new pieces. I just want to see what happens. A month later, I got a call from Simon & Schuster, an art director at Simon & Schuster, asking me to do this book cover about a story about Pinocchio based on the work that I had just put on my website. It was a dream come true. It was as if I was actually finally starting my career. And this is 2011. So 4 years in, felt like I finally got there. Did this job, turned it in, submitted it to Spectrum Fantastic Art juried competition that year, and I won a gold medal for it. So it was sort of not only a dream come true to get the assignment, but it was a confirmation that I was on the right path. This piece also at the exact same time, which was the first real jobs I had done once I figured out my quote unquote style or personal viewpoint. This one won a silver medal from Society of Illustrators. So it was a long journey, finally getting there. And even in these first few pieces, getting recognition for it, I realized I'm on the right path. Another one from that same time, this piece, it's kind of wonky and weird, and it's not in my portfolio anymore, but this piece got me so much work. And again, it was just following my own instincts, my own ideas. Bob Dylan, portrait of Bob Dylan. I did a gallery show with Jeff Love in Richmond and got to explore my own ideas again. This is Winter 2. This is based on the shape of a mountain. It's called Mountaintop. So I decided to do a show exploring themes that excited me the most. Nothing overly cerebral or overly intelligent. I was tired of the idea that if it was going to be fine art, if it was going to be worthy of expression, it needed to be important. Who cares? It does not need to be important. It just needs to be something that excites you. To me, winter, dead trees, snow, shapes, textures, that's enough. It doesn't have to be anything else. And I can't tell you how long it took me to get to that place where I actually thought that those ideas were worthy of being put down on paper and painted. This is a job from around that time, New Yorker, Smithsonian Magazine. If you look at some of those pieces I showed you, you can really see that texture that I was seeing in those drawings. Another one for the New Yorker. You look at this piece and you can see all those influences. Lautrec, Edward Tooney, all that graphic work from Germany that I really liked so much. David Bowie for Entertainment Weekly. So here you see me just going after limited color, texture, drawing, letting the drawing show through, not covering it up with layers of acrylic. It's my real true voice. It's what I really wanted. This one was going a lot further and seeing how far I could develop a piece in this style. It's a book cover for Huckleberry Finn for Penguin, the publisher. Poster for Black Dragon Press. This was the first poster job I got, and it was a dream come true because obviously looking at the work that I liked, posters were sort of the next step for me. It's for Nautilus magazine. Criterion Collection. Getting to do my own type, pretty fun. That was for Playboy magazine. Phil Ivey, the poker player, king of poker. These were film posters for a writer and director in New York. One for Mondo for the film Lawless. It's a portrait of Hellboy for a 20th anniversary show in LA. Frank Underwood. So here's another example of doing pieces that you want to do for yourself. I did these for a gallery show. Getting a job right after that based on those pieces. So I put those in my portfolio. Every time I did some personal work where I thought, gosh, is this okay for an illustration portfolio? I always trust my instincts and say, you know what? If I get a job based on this, I'd love to do that job. So let's just put it in the portfolio and see what happens. So I got this magazine cover about climate change and a dying tree. New Yorker, portrait of John Ford. Johnny Cash for Rolling Stone. This is a 60th anniversary cover for Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. One of my friends' album cover for him. This is a piece for fun. Magazine illustration. This was another just self-generated piece. So I started exploring some, you know, in that list that I showed you, there's a lot of creepy, dark kind of stuff talking about that I like. Love that stuff. So, you know, the idea was, I remember thinking early on when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, I remember thinking, I don't know, am I allowed to draw that stuff? I feel like Mike Mignola gets to do all that stuff. Like, that's him. Like, is it me too? Then I realized, of course it's me too. Thinking back to when I was a child, all I wanted to look at were books on aliens and ghosts and Bigfoot, Dracula, and monsters and things like that. That stuff was everything to me. So I put those in my portfolio. I got jobs based on it. You know, that's the idea. I think if you're only thinking about the market and what's marketable, you're not thinking about it the right way. That's half of the equation. The other half is believing in yourself and your own ideas. So I put things like that in my portfolio. I get a job from Rolling Stone to do a piece that I really want to do. Metallica wasn't that exciting to me. Neither were the Raconteurs, but getting to do Black Sabbath, are you kidding me? That's awesome. Another one that I was really excited about, Marilyn Manson. It's a dream come true. So back to sketchbook. This is going back a ways, 2012. But if you're ever looking for something to draw on your sketchbook to get better at drawing, just do self-portraits. Do them in 20 different materials. Do them with different lighting if you're bored. Do them with 5 mirrors. You know, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's a free and willing model to sit for you. And I would encourage you guys, don't copy your face. Don't worry about accuracy. Throw that out the window. Use your own face. Use the forms. Use the shadows as a tool to draw from. Don't copy it. You're going to miss the point. More sketchbook drawing. Draw your feet on the floor if it's interesting. Table scenes. And I started doing this in Paris. I had a teacher at the academy, Brent Watkinson, who encouraged me to draw my drink. And that was the same thing as that I just said about self-portraits. It's something to draw. It's always in front of you. So you go to lunch, you see your cup on the table that you're drinking out of, draw it. You know, you have a beer, draw the beer. So to me, I expanded that and just thought, well, I'm just going to do full table scenes and still life and things like that, and just see if I can make a nice composition just like on the spot, see if I can do it. So for a long time, I drew my sketchbook every day. This is just breakfast. And then I still do paintings every once in a while outside in my sketchbook. This is what I refer to as refilling the well. Like I said earlier, the well runs dry and you got to get excited again. So how do you do it? Go out and draw and paint from life. It's the best way to do it. It's a train station in St. Louis. This is in Forest Park. And by the way, like I said, draw things that excite you. These forms, that's interesting to me. Like, can I accomplish it? Can I do it? That challenge, it's exciting. So I stuck with it. I just got a few more images here, and then we'll move on to questions. This is for Folio Society, The Shining. The next number of pieces are from that. A lot of Toulouse-Lautrec in here, a lot of Edward Tooney, a lot of those influences, but it's also very me. You know, there's silly things that you think about, like everyone's always second guessing themselves, right? When you're making an illustration, when you're thinking about what an illustration is supposed to be, there's all these questions like, you know, for me, it was like, can I do just a black background? Is that okay? The answer is yes. Do whatever you want, you know, take the risk. This is all from The Shining still. This is East of Eden for Folio Society. A lot of my influences in this one. Really wanted to play that up. I was looking again, looking at it, trying to soak it in, see if I could kind of go after it. It fit the time period. It had the feeling that I wanted, so I wanted to see if I could really kind of get some of that grit and grime from the turn of the century into these pieces. And kind of follow my instincts a little bit. And add some variety too. A lot of Mark English in this one, that's for sure. So again, I have all these monsters and crazy things in my portfolio. A lot of things that people told me early on, you're not going to get work for that. That's not marketable. So my response was, too bad. I'm going to do it anyways. And here you go. This is a job. It's a job for a magazine. And when I got this assignment, I thought, oh my God, that's crazy. This is exactly what I want to draw, you know, dream come true. Gallery piece. This is for Texas Monthly magazine. I got to do, speaking of monsters, got to do this cover story on Harvey Weinstein for The Hollywood Reporter. And it was a big job for me, very terrifying. Like Texas Monthly. This is for Playboy magazine. Putin for the Wall Street Journal. And this is for Texas Monthly as well. This one's sort of out of order, but this was for Criterion Collection. But this was one that I felt I really was following my instincts and my voice and believing in myself. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. Style is being you. Don't fight what is natural. How you draw or paint naturally is probably the way to go. You're forcing something, it may be that you're trying to be someone else. Play to your strengths, but don't just do the easy thing. You'll get bored. If something new comes easily, but you didn't enjoy it, don't do it. You're probably going to be doing this for a while, so you should like all the parts of your process, even the quote unquote busy work parts, the technical parts or technical parts. You should be you, plus a collection of your influences. As you start to get client work, the deadlines will determine much of the evolution of your style. And that's very true. If you're worried about style, the deadlines are going to do a lot of the work for you. You're going to have to do work very fast as an illustrator. You're going to have to make decisions and stick with it. And a lot of the stylistic development happens in that process. So basically for me, style equals your natural artistic tendencies, plus the experiences you've had, plus the things you like, plus your artistic influences, plus deadlines. And that's what style is. So really quick, before we move on to questions, I just want to show a few of the pieces from my installment 3 students with Visual Arts Passage. This is all work created within the last 11 weeks. And that's how long our classes are. They're 11 weeks long. 9 class periods. 2 of the class periods are lectures. So we have guest presenters come in. And by the way, I wanted to mention for anyone who's interested in the program, they're 3-hour-long classes, but they're not like classes at a university. They are completely filled with material. So there's lectures, presentations, demos, and critiques, and it lasts the entire 3 hours. And it usually goes over just a little bit because we don't have time for everything. So it's not like a regular class where you show up to class and the teacher says, all right, everyone's going to work on their projects. It's not like that. It's a lot of material at a rapid pace. This is Anka Gladnick, Paul Schrubel, Shane Klusky, another one of Shane's pieces. And these are his daily exercises. Diamond Star, Kathleen Moore, Addison Green, Rob Jordan, another one of Paul's, another one of Anka's pieces. This was the last piece she did. This was just an exercise that Paul Schrubel did. Another one of his exercises. Another one of his exercises. One of Diamond Star's pieces. This is an exercise that Clarabelle did. Another one of Kathleen's. Philip Coleman. And another one that Rob Jordan did. All right, so John, that's it for me. I'm gonna stop my share here. Should we take questions at this point?
Yeah, there's been some questions building up along the way. I'll start with a really simple one. What type of paper do you work on?
It's Stonehenge brand paper, and I started using it because I was looking for a toned paper, so a paper that had some color to it. Stonehenge makes a number of colors that are really great. They're sort of mid-tones. They're on the light side. So there's one color is called Fawn. Here, I'll put them in the chat. One color is called Fawn. And these are the ones that work for water-based media. Not all of them work well, and I don't know why. So Fawn is sort of a cream color. There's Craft, which is the brown that I use a lot, and there's Pearl Gray, which is a nice gray, light gray. But the Pearl Gray is on the cool side, the Fawn is on the warm side, and the Craft is brown. So you can find them on dickblick.com or just in any art store, really.
With that question, I'm going to follow this, Edward, because I think this is incredibly important. And a big part of the teaching that I've been doing for the last 25 years through the Academy and now recently with Visual Art Passage, and I know that you've experienced this, nothing's hidden. I mean, I really get a kick out of you showing people, like, start to finish, how you do things, every detail, every material, because it doesn't matter. Material don't matter. It's the point of view. I mean, if you want to do, and here's two things. Number one, if you want to do Edward Kinsella, knock yourself out. But Edward's already doing Edward Kinsella, so what's the freaking so
yeah, I don't care. Go ahead, do it, take it.
But
I'll do something else.
But good luck also, because that comes from a place. I look at imitators. I look at people that have imitated Gary and people that imitated my father or Chris Payne, and they never get there because there's something so personal and so special about the original that it really can't be duplicated. And
Do you want to be a bad version of someone else, or do you want to be you? And that's where this whole journey started for me. It was like I just wanted to be me, and I wanted to figure it out right now.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that people that I know in your classes I've sat in and watched the recording or sat and watched you do your demo live, and you show absolutely every little detail, all the nuances, everything. And that's there's a lot of value to that, but it's more than anything, it shows you that you can do it. A demonstration just shows that somebody can do it. I mean, that somebody else can do it, but then you can relate it to your needs. Well, this is how I could do that. I'll use these materials, or I'll do this. And again, the voice doesn't come from the materials, so showing you everything is not an issue.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, like, this is a free lecture, but if you talk to any of my students, I share everything in my classes. So it's all material questions, business questions, everything.
Ted, Ted, I think there's a chance we have a few of your students in the classroom. So
oh, no way.
If anyone's in the class that's here, feel free to chime in the chat. They might have left, but it'd be fun to hear what they have to say. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, they'll completely call him out. Say, no, he's not telling
you. The worst teacher.
Sorry to derail your.
He's so full of it now. No. Hey, there's some really good artists in this audience. I'm looking at Tony Rodriguez, who has developed a point of view and a style for himself that's just phenomenal. Don Kilpatrick, the same thing. I'm looking at some really good artists that are in this lecture, and I think they'll tell you that hey, this is where it comes from. We got a couple more questions I'd like to answer. This is a good one, and one that I think is very, very important. There's Shane. Shane's stepping up and saying,
"Thanks, Shane."
Send him his check, Timmy. Does multiple styles, techniques confuse art directors, clients? Should you have one voice starting out?
I think so. When I started my career, I heard illustrators say that If you're working in a small market, like a local market, having a ton of different styles that you can use is to your advantage. But if you're going to be working on a larger scale, like for New York publications or international publications from major cities, you want to have something that's distinct so that when they, like, think about it this way. An art director has a project coming up, right? And they say, oh, you know who's perfect for this? Edward Kinsella. And the reason is because his pieces look like this. And it's the right tone, it's the right mood, whatever. So if I delivered something different that didn't feel like the rest of my work, I think they'd say, hey, why doesn't this look like the rest of your work? And they'd be upset about it. So that said, there is a range within styles. And there's been a few circumstances where an art director has been upset that I used another range within my style, or another sort of from one end of the spectrum to the other. But in my defense, I would say, well, that's on my website. So if you're basically hiring me for anything in my portfolio, and there is a range within it, it's all related. There's a common thread that's running through it, but there's some wiggle room, and I can decide, you know, if I want to render it this way or if I want to render it that way. So if it's upsetting to the art director, but it's in my portfolio, then there's really nothing, I've done nothing wrong. But if I do something that they've never seen before, that's totally out in left field and it isn't right for the project, then you're going to get in trouble.
Okay, I got a good question for you here. Maybe a tough one. Question: what defines soulless illustration? Does genre work, fantasy, sci-fi, anime, and video game focus fall in that definition?
Uh-oh.
You know, go ahead, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in afterwards.
Well, okay. I guess to relate it to what I was talking about, I would say if it feels very surfacey and decorative, but it doesn't have any substance behind it, then yes, I would say it's probably soulless. Does that mean that it doesn't have value? No, not at all. But what I desire personally in my work is to work on the projects and the pieces that have some real meat to them, that have something that's lying underneath that is powerful. I don't want to just do something that's just sort of fluff, you know, that's just shiny and bright and colorful. If it doesn't have a reason, I don't want to do it. And that's personal though. It doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, that's why I started it by saying every artist is different, because you might say, you know, I want to do rainbow unicorns. And I would say, that's fine. I respect you as an artist. And if that's what you want to do and it makes you happy, that's exactly what you should do. So I think it's personal.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think that people like categorize, oh, you're doing, you know, sci-fi fantasy. Well, sci-fi fantasy, there's incredible artists that work in sci-fi fantasy. Some of my favorite. You know, I look at the work of obviously John Foster. I look at Vance Kovacs and Justin Sweet, Carla Ortiz. You know, different genres. There's, I don't know. It seems like to me there's always people that do it at a level that has soul, and they do it for the love of doing it. You know, it's not, you know, there's been phenomenal anime done. And you know, I don't,
it's definitely not defined by genre. I agree.
No, I don't either. I mean, it's like, gosh, I mean, if you can go look at like some of the concept work, the original concept work that Kovacs and Sweet do, it's like great contemporary painting. I mean, it's so freaking good. And the people that, you know, Mullins and Foster and the people that work in, you know, Donato Giancola, I mean, you know, people that work at a super high level, it's all good. And, you know, again, I guess there's things that tie it. There's mechanical things, especially like in the gaming world, that tie certain things, certain types of work for production. That might be, to me, that might be, some of that might be soulless, but there's a need for it. There's a purpose to it. I always got a kick out of, I remember once seeing a David Apatow's blog, a post of Bernie Fuchs, a post about a bunch of images that he put up of Bernie's. And I saw these like trolls, these haters come after him and said, well, all he's doing is just like pretty women and beautiful. They're like, why is he that? Why is it? Because it was the, it was the assignment. It was women's love stories, or it was a women's magazines that work was done for. That's the genre that he worked in. And he just did this beautiful work created around those stories. And I got such a kick. It's like, you can't judge illustration without judging what it's done for and its purpose. I mean, it has a job to do. So never forget that. What's the next? I got a Don Kilpatrick question here. Have you ever tried any printmaking process in your work, like woodcut or lithography?
Yeah, I do. I do photocopy transfers, and the reason I started doing it was I wanted to put typography on an image for an editorial piece. But if you've ever done typography by hand on a painting, you know that if you overwork it and you over noodle it, it looks like you did. It doesn't look right. So it needed to be direct. So I decided to do a photocopy transfer with xylene markers. And that experience of doing that made me realize that a printmaking process, in addition to the rest of the way that I was painting and drawing, I needed it. Like, it just felt so right. So almost every single piece that I do, there's a layer that's photocopy. And here, let me share my screen really quick as I talk about this. I'll just show you. I'll just go into my portfolio. So, for instance, this piece, so this is on brown paper, and it is all this texture is photocopy. So they're shapes, just shapes that I've done in black ink, gotten a photocopy of them, transferred it onto the image. I did the same thing here on Jack's shirt, but then I did washes of red gouache on top of it. So it changed the value, it changed the color. On this area, photocopy and then ink on top of it to make this lace look. This is all FW ink, just straight up on the brown paper. This is white colored pencil on the brown paper. So like, this is a different way to render than this is, which is graphite with ink wash on top. All the confetti is gouache. Let's see what else. Yeah, so I mean, the printmaking part is actually something that is like really important to me, for sure.
Okay, let's just take a couple more questions, and then we need to think about being done. So do you always think in your brand style? Do you ever mentally visualize a messy watercolor solution for an image, but know it would be off brand? Do you conceptualize everything in your particular style, or do you sometimes take a mental image and force fit it into a prepared execution?
Let me share my screen. I should just keep it on. Okay, so here's the way I think I could answer that question. Every time I do an image, which for those of you who've done an illustration, you know the process is thumbnail sketch first. So when I'm doing thumbnail sketches, this is what it looks like. And the idea for me is I'm planning everything out, and then I'm deciding at this stage what each piece of the puzzle is going to be done with. So for me, talking about getting bored and hating working on a piece if it's one material, I like to say, okay, well, this area right here is going to be photocopy transfer, and then the hair is going to be done in FW ink, and then the skin is going to be done with graphite and ink wash, and then the background is going to be flat FW ink. So I'm usually planning it out. If I am sitting down just to do a piece for fun, that's when I kind of let loose a little bit, and I decide to do something in the way that you're talking about, like just a kind of a wild watercolor loose piece. But usually the pieces that I do, I tend to go after a graphic quality. So that's what I'm thinking about. I try to think like a printmaker, I guess, in layers. I hope that answers your question.
Here's another here's a good question from another really good artist, Stephen Hughes. During the mentorship with Sterling, did he have you find oppositions to to clarify what you wanted to do with your work? If so, what were they, and are they still the same?
Like oppositions from what I was doing? No. Like line versus tone are more conceptual. No, I mean that's the way he thinks. So I guess what you're talking about is Sterling likes to try to put two things that oppose each other into his work, and that's where he finds his style. To me, it's clearer than that. I don't want to give myself any more challenges than I already have, So, yeah, it's I think that's just it's already like talking about weaknesses and strengths. When you figure out what works best for you, you better run with it, And for me, the way that I approach my images, it's not only that I like it, it's that it works, and I enjoy that it works, and I enjoy that I can rely on it on a deadline. So if I wanted to add more complexity to it, I would probably just be hurting myself, because I've learned through my own journaling and self-reflection that simplicity is very important to me. If you give me complexity, I will freak out. So that's just being honest.
All right. I think we ought to, I don't even know, not sure on the time. It's
1:42.
Okay. How about one last question, Edward? And I'm trying to choose from several good ones here. There's a lot of questions. Here's one. It's interesting because it probably relates to a lot of people from Beth Lucas. How do you prepare for a portfolio shift, business-wise, contacting art directors, make sure that you have so much cash reserve? How do you prepare for that shift?
Well, you start by having a part-time job so that the shift in your income doesn't matter. And I had a part-time job for the first 3 or 4 years of my career, and it was really helpful knowing that I still had enough to pay my bills and all that. I didn't have anyone relying on me. I wasn't married or had kids. So I decided to start saying no and turning down all the jobs I didn't want to do while I was developing my portfolio. If something came along that I felt was appropriate and that I would enjoy doing, then I would take it. And, the style shift was not a shift to something that was bad. It wasn't a shift to something that was not going to work. It was still going to work just fine. And I found it to be a pretty easy process. But eventually, when I had enough pieces, I just decided to scrap my online portfolio and put in all the new work. There were a few pieces from my old portfolio that still kind of bridged the gap, and I kept those in for a little while. But once I had the new work in there, I felt that it really wasn't gonna be a problem. So, and then I re-promoted, basically, to all the art directors that I liked working with. I sent them emails and I said, "Here's my new work."
Changed your name.
Do you like it? But
all right,
yeah.
well, let's do this. I think everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found this a benefit. I found it really interesting. Edward, thank you for taking such care in preparing for this. I mean, the talk was really, really good.
Yeah, thanks for joining today, Ted.
Thank you.
And everybody else, if anybody has any questions about the program or anything, Timmy and I are going to stick around and here for a couple of minutes if you have any questions. And I hope that someday we'll see you in one of our programs.
Yeah,
So
we'll stick around. If anybody has any questions about how the program works, how to apply, where to enroll, we're here.
yeah, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And Don, um, it's really great to have really established people in the industry come in and say good things about us. That's nice. Um, Very cool.
Yeah, I just shared a link to the application. So if you do want to have access to this recording, the recording will be posted probably tomorrow. But yeah, if you apply, you get access to this recording and a library of other recordings for 15 days. So
Also, you can sign up for a portfolio review.
yeah, applicants also get the portfolio review.
And I do a lot of that. I really enjoy it. It's fun to see where people, I learn a lot doing it. And the needs of what artists are going through as far as either changing or just trying to build their craft and learn about the industry. And I think I have a pretty good perspective on, how to start and the skill sets you need to approach different parts of the industry. That's really what most portfolio reviews come down to. It's like how looking at your work and being able to decipher what's the best path for you, or what's the easiest path, and try to help you understand how it fits in the industry. It's really important that you learn, you think about your education and your development as a professional by understanding the industry first. And I think that's one of the bigger mistakes that young illustrators, or even pretty mature illustrators, like if they're trying to make a shift, is they don't analyze the market very well and the needs and who the people that are actually hiring them or will be hiring them. They don't understand it. Artists are famous for showing what they like and what they want to show, but they don't relate it to the industry very well.
Yeah. So here's a question. Maha said, is there anything we can try out for free? This is kind of the free thing. But I think the portfolio review is a great way to start, to get a really kind of full understanding of what that experience is in the classroom, which is, it's a very personal, it's a very one-on-one focused experience. Your classes of visual arts passage are going to have a lot of lecture, and there's going to be a lot of demo. So it's not completely back and forth and conversational, but it is a very personal experience. It's not a one size fits all program like a traditional educational system. It's focused on the individual, and that's why we call our instructors mentors.
Plus we usually have 8 students in our class.
Yeah, the classes are very small.
Really small.
Yeah.
We've thought about that, Steve. Help us.
Yeah.
It always comes out every week. I get people come from, like every year we always get 6 to 10 international students come to the Illustration Academy, and some of them will be related to game companies or be working professionals there. And they'll say, you need to come do this here. And my response is, figure it out. Help us.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to travel.
Yeah, I think last year was Germany.
Yeah.
We'll go to Germany.
Yeah, be happy to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you everybody for being here. And again, if there's any questions about classes, please speak up. We'll stick around here for another 3 or 4 minutes. Danny Smith asked Timmy about the Illustration Academy.
Danny, I'll follow up with you regarding that via email, because I did learn a little bit about that.
I think it's pronounced Maha. Is it if there's anything we can try?
Yeah, that was the question I answered before.
Yeah, start there. Yeah, start with that and sign up for a portfolio review, and we can talk about. I'll show you functionally how everything works, and then we can take it a step further if you want.
Yeah, and just a reminder, all you have to do for the portfolio review is just simply apply to the program. There's no commitment. There's no cost. Tony, the recorded version of the video is available, but it's only available for people who apply to the program. I just shared the link. If you apply to the program, you're able to view any of our recordings, a library of recordings, for 15 days.
Hey,
Robert. Yeah, I was just gonna say, Robert, if
you're the same, set up a portfolio review with me and let's talk. Okay. That would be the best thing. And we'll just go into a classroom. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about within reason. Is their portfolio preview good for applying to art programs? Oh, very much so. You know, applying to a BFA program, applying to art schools, it's about the quality of your portfolio. That's where all the discounts, that's where all the scholarships come from. We can greatly enhance your abilities quickly. That's what we're designed for.
Yeah, I mean, something that I would really emphasize is it's not something that it's not scripted. It's the conversations you have and the interactions you have with our program. They're custom tailored. So it's not a scripted thing that we do the same thing for everybody. So whatever your goal is as an artist, it's going to be designed to help you. Hey, Robert, if you just shoot me an email, you just send us an email at hello@theillustrationacademy.com or hello@visualartspassage.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Call me anytime. Another thing I'd say is if anybody does, want to have a conversation and talk with us, give us a phone call. We're a small team. We all wear a lot of hats, and believe it or not, this phone number gets forwarded right to me and John. So we are very accessible, and call anytime. A lot of you are international students, so you might call us in the middle of the night. We'll do our best to answer.
Say thanks a lot, Timmy.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Any other questions, please reach out. We're going to go ahead and close the room. If you feel like you come up with a question as soon as the room closes, shoot us an email. We'll be available. All right. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
We really appreciate you coming today and hope that you found what we have to say of value.
No, thanks, guys.
Is that Edward?
Yeah.
You're still here?
Yeah, why not?
Edward, thank you.
All right.
And I should have said this too. Thanks for showing the work out of your class. That killed me. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
What I love about it is it's not like one directional. It goes in so many different directions.
Yeah, everyone followed their own voice for sure.
And that to me is so great when I can go into that Slack account or go into the Dropbox and look at all the images that are there. Is that the work from the beginning of that semester, I never had to look at who, and I would play that game. I would never look at who the work was sent in or was from. I would know whose work it was just by the image, and that's saying a lot. So anyway, great work, Edward.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, guys.